Hello, this session concerns Chapter 10, the Myotatic Reflex, which is part of the Neurophysiology unit. In this chapter, we're going to learn about maintaining posture, which is our first document or our first activity. Now, the meaning of posture will soon be clarified, so don't worry. If you look at the title of the chapter again, the word reflex should catch your attention and ring a bell, since it was discussed in grade 10. However, a quick feedback will be done before starting our lesson. Keep in mind that by the end of the session, you would learn how is posture maintained. The second slide here reveals the points to be dealt with, which are numerated from 1 to 8. These points will each appear on the slide to guide you through the content. Now, as the title of the activity is about maintaining posture, the first point to be clarified is the meaning of posture. This is found in slide 3. The first question is, what is meant by posture and how is it achieved? If you read along the slide, posture is the position in which you hold your body when standing, sitting, or walking. That is, it is the maintenance of the body in an upright, balanced position. All of these activities, the walking, the balancing, the standing, the sitting, all of them are postural activities that the body can perform by reflex while maintaining equilibrium. This is why we say postural activities are performed by reflex. That is, we perform them unconsciously without thinking. So by now, the meaning of the word reflex should be clear, which is point 2. It is an involuntary, innate, unconscious action which is going to take place without the intervention of the brain. The spinal cord is the nerve center. An example of reflex action dealt with in grade 10, if you recall, was touching a hot object, where you would tend to quickly remove your hand to prevent injury. So it is obvious that this is an act of protection. Therefore, reflex ensures protection against changes in the environment and the regulations of the functions of the body. For the reflex action to happen, the presence of certain structures are essential. These are found on slide 4. Slide 4 is showing you the anatomical units of the reflex arc, that is, the structures responsible and essential for obtaining a reflex action. The first structure is the receptor, which is going to receive the stimulus. It is going to transform the stimulation energy into a nerve message. This nerve message is going to be transmitted to the spinal cord, which is the nerve center here, by the sensory neuron via an afferent pathway that is going from the receptor to the center. Next, the center is going to process an information, and a motor message is going to be carried by the motor neuron via an efferent nervous pathway to the effector organ here, which is the muscle in case of movement, posture, maintenance. Now, the pathway taken by a stimulus to travel from the receptor organ to the effector organ is the reflex arc. Slide 5 is showing us the muscle anatomy and movement. Muscles are responsible, as you know, for all the movement of the body. Those involved for movement of the bones are called skeletal muscles. They are attached by tendons, as you would see here, following all the tendons. They are attached by tendon to the bone. That is, each one of them is connected from its two extremities to two bones by the following structures called the tendon. Muscles, as you know, contract and relax. The aspect of the muscle is going to change during contraction and during relaxation. As you would observe in the nearby figure, the first figure is showing you a muscle which is in a state of relaxation. As you would observe, we have an increase in the length of the muscle. Now, when the muscle tends to contract, as you're going to observe here, it's contracting by following the arrow, you're going to observe that the length is going to decrease, and we have like a bulging aspect here, and it has force within it. As you would observe, we have a decrease in the length. And again, if it is going to relax by following the arrow, you're going to observe we're going to have an increase in the length of the muscle. So by now, you know that posture is the position in which you hold your body when standing, sitting, walking, keeping a balanced position. And you know that it's going to involve muscles which are going to be connected to the bones by tendon, and that the muscles are involved for the movement of the bone, and that the muscles are going to contract and relax. So we're going to take the following notions and apply them in the coming slides. The next slide here, slide 6, shows the kinds of muscles in your body, the extensors and the flexors. Keep in mind that when the extensor muscle contracts, it leads to a movement we call an extension movement. While when the flexor muscle contracts, flexion, which is a bending movement, is going to happen. The first figure and the adjacent document is showing a flexion movement. This is here the flexion movement. As you would observe, we have a bending movement. We're bringing the forearm closer to the upper arm. This is the upper arm and this is the forearm. When we do a flexion movement here, we're going to bring this forearm close to the upper arm. This is a flexion movement. Now, as you would observe here, we have a muscle which we call the bicep. They're going to contract. The bicep are flexor muscle. So when the flexor muscle here is contracting, the corresponding movement is going to be a flexion. Notice that the other muscle here, the tricep muscle, which is the extensor, is in a relaxed state. So in a flexion movement, which is, as you're observing here, a bending movement, the following forearm is coming closer to the upper arm, and here, as you would observe, we have a decrease in the angle. This is going to help you know the difference between a flexion movement and an extension movement, which is going to be needed in the coming activities. And the second figure here, the tricep muscle, this is the tricep muscle, which is the extensor muscle, is contracting. Now, the arm is going to straighten. It is going to extend. As you would observe, the angle is increasing between the forearm and the upper arm. in contrast to the following here, where the angle had decreased in the following movement, which is the flexion movement. This movement here in the second figure is called an extension movement, in contrast to the following here, to the one before, which was the flexion movement. Now, I want you to notice something here, that in this case, the bicep muscle, which is the flexor muscle, which was in a contracted state here in the flexion movement, here in this case, in the extension movement, it is relaxed, while the extensor muscle was in a contracted state. In the first figure here, the flexion movement, the tricep, which is the extensor muscle, had relaxed, while the bicep, which is the flexor muscle, had contracted. So, the action of the extensor and the flexor muscles in each movement are opposite. When one contracts, the other should relax for the movement to happen. This is why we say that the extensor and the flexor muscles are antagonistic. They work opposite to each other. By now, you know that we require reflexes to maintain our posture and balance. The following reflexes are called spinal reflexes. And of course, posture maintaining involves the intervention of muscle. This is the main point that we have reached till now. So, let us answer our problem. How is posture maintained? And what does maintaining posture has to do with myotatic reflex? First, we have to know what is a myotatic reflex, and this is the document found on slide 7. It is observed that when a muscle is stretched by pulling or by applying a load, it will respond by contracting. This is what we call a myotatic reflex. So when a muscle is stretched due to a certain force, its length is going to increase. The muscle is going to respond by contracting. This is what we call a myotatic reflex, also referred to as a stretch reflex. Here, the pulling stimulus, for example, is applied on the muscle itself, which performs an action that is contracting. So the muscle is the receptor and the effector organ at the same time. This is referred to as a proprioceptive reflex. Unlike the example, when you touch a hot object, the receptor is in the skin and the effector organ is the muscle. So in this case, the receptor and the effector are in different organs. This is an exteroceptive reflex. As you would recall, the question here is, how is a myotatic reflex involved in our daily life in maintaining posture? This notion is going to be explained in slide 8, which is showing the main anti-gravity muscles in our body. So let's have a closer look at the document. As you would observe here, the adjacent document is showing the main anti-gravity muscles, which are colored in dark red, involved in the maintenance of posture. Now, what are anti-gravity muscles? What is the role of anti-gravity muscles? Actually, anti-gravity muscles hold our body up against gravity. They counterbalance the pull of gravity to maintain an upright, balanced posture. You see, gravity tends to pull our head down, but despite this, our head maintains an equilibrium. How is this done? As said before, in a myotatic reflex, the stretching of a muscle leads to its own contraction. Here, gravity tends to pull the head down, yet the body modifies this effect due to the contraction of the neck muscle, the muscles that are found here. So, the following muscles, they're going to contract as a response to the stretching by the effect of gravity. Thus, when they contract, the position of the head is corrected and equilibrium is established.